I'm going to show you how I go about spinning my soft Shetland wool locks that I've flick carded into these 1 ounce bats. So this is typically the form I will sell my wool into spinners, and I've gotten accolades for the quality of the bats, so I thought that I would share what I do. I never thought it was all that special, but the thing with me is I've always worked with my soft Shetland wool. I really don't have any point of reference for other materials, so I've never really thought about it in terms of being unique or different. But feedback I've gotten is for people that have purchased raw fleeces that they had a little trepidation out front, so wanted to just sort of share what I do. So I'm using my Ashford drum carder. I got this about 10 years ago. It's all I've used to create bats, and unfortunately I don't really know what the TPI is. I do know that it was purchased for me by my husband as a Christmas gift, and the thing that attracted him to it was that it's supposed to be for fine wool, and obviously we're in the low 20s with our average micron count, which would qualify it as fine. So what I've shown before in other videos is that when I flick card it, I end up holding on to the skin, the side closest to the skin, or also called the butt end. So when I have my locks ready to card, they're always in this triangle shape, and the dry side, the side that's closest to a sun and the environment, is always the base of the triangle, where the butt end, the skin side, is the tip of the triangle. When I'm going to drum card my flicked locks into bats, first thing I do, I have a digital scale, and I'll weigh it out to, usually I do a little over 1 ounce because some of the stuff does get caught up on the carder. And 3 key things I always do: I always feed it through the surface sun side first. The reason I do that is I feel like it gets a good dispersion of the fibers across the liquorin, and so it'll be more likely to spread out and fan out onto the main drum. Number 2 is I always go very slowly. I have a manual crank. This isn't electrical. So good with fine fibers because it does allow you to go very slowly. Don't hold on to the fiber. Once it's on the liquorin, just let it go. And I'm push this out just a tiny bit. Sorry about that. So nice and easy. You can see it catching on there. And I feed them, believe it or not, I know this is tedious, but I feed them in one at a time. Very nice and easy. They're fine fibers, they're not going to break, but there is a tendency for them to build up and create little pills on the drum. Nice and easy. Once I get a sense, you can hear the combs on the liquorin catching on the fibers that are on the main drum. I'll take one of my paddle cards, and I know some manufacturers offer a brush, but this works perfectly fine, just to compact the fibers down so that when they're coming back around, they're not getting caught on the liquorin. I also try to make sure I distribute them equally, so that I get a good, even distribution across the drum. This wool is from our ewe Eleanor, so I featured her in my last video talking about the fact that she was a rude fleece, which is really lovely, and she's gray, a gray catmugget, which means I'm going to have a nice range of colors in gray. This is the medium gray from her fleece. So it is again, like I said, I've never really done any other fibers, so I don't really know. I guess maybe the tendency is to crank a little bit faster, but I mean, it's all about TLC with the fine wool. One thing I had noticed that I didn't even realize I was doing was that it's like, let me see. You can see it's like bridged because of the compression onto the drum. Now, yeah, I don't know, are people aghast because I'm, putting pressure on my tines on my drum carder? I have not seen any negative effects or impact on The product is a result of me doing that. So now I'm going to go into fast speed on the video until the end, and then I'll show you how I remove it. And I'm going to also, everyone does this disclaimer as I'm watching podcasts. I guess we wool people aren't the most confident teachers, but this is how I do it. I've never really been trained, and I'm kind of starting now to pay more attention to podcasts where people are working with wool and learning a lot of stuff. So, it's not that I'm arrogant and think that my way is the only way. It's just that this is sort of what I've adapted over time, and I'm really interested actually that I know that there are a few other people that have offered insight into how to prep and drum card fine wools. I'm excited to watch those and learn. I guess I'm not going to go too fast, but this is my 1 ounce of locks. Just pull them right up off of the scale. At this point, I only do solid colored bats. I've seen some really cool gradient bat work done that I just, at this point, have not prioritized, although I do find it really interesting. They're really beautiful. Probably very fun to spin, I'd imagine. When I do gradient yarns, I do it from the lock so that I have like practically perfect capturing of the scale of colors from very light to very dark, because I do gradients just from one fleece because I love not only the breed specific yarns but the use specific yarns, coming right off of, let's just say, Eleanor here in this case. So one of the things I've noticed when I've rolled up my bats is I can still sort of see the shape of the locks as they went onto the drum, and on occasion, if it's very pronounced and it troubles me, I'll run them through the drum carder a second time by just taking the bat and pulling it apart into maybe 6 or 7 sections and then running those sections through. So here I have my doffer, and I push my handle with my belly a little bit, get it caught up in my pelvic bone there to prevent it from moving. And I put a little pressure with my thumb on this end. Over here I feel like I'm getting it pretty well, but here I just kind of push it with my thumb. And then I take these are all things I don't even realize I do until I'm sitting here trying to describe it. But I take the doffer and I sort of put a little pressure against the tines here. I don't know, just to keep it from moving. Alright, so here's probably where I'm really committing sacrilege, is where I have this knitting needle that I've been using for years to remove the wool from the drum. And I just, every few times, again, like I said, I've had this carder for at least 10 years. I know longer than that, but just to be conservative. And I've done this easily 500 times, probably more. So, if there's a concern about wrecking your drum by doing this, it's my mini example for how doing this is not going to damage your drum. I can't think of a better one. Alright, so I really do try to get as much off as I can because I've measured it as usually 1.05 ounces. Alright, so there's my bat. And then, I just I roll it up into the little batlet. I've heard someone refer to it as that, which I thought was kind of neat. And then because it's so fine and crimpy, it almost acts as Velcro and just sort of closes up on itself. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here is the bat off the drum, and this is what I use to roll up my bats. It's a piece off of, it's actually a hide, sadly, which means that the animal has actually perished. And it came off of a ram that we had that we absolutely loved. His name was Pompey. And he actually, well, it's a sad story, but when we reintroduced him into the ram pen after breeding, the other rams decided that it was, they wanted to attack him or whatever, and he ended up getting fatally injured. And so we took him to a guy that made this into a hide for us, and I always think of him whenever I do this. But at any rate, so it makes a nice surface for me to wind up my wool, like wool on wool. I take the end that I broke with the doffer and I start with that end. The end where I've pulled it off the carder, there's all these really nice loose pieces, so they kind of help to have the bat seal against itself. Sorry. So these are the loose pieces after I pulled it off the bat, and here's more of the blunt end from where I've done the doffing tool. And so, you know, this is pretty squishy, and I like to tuck the sides in as I roll. I feel like I'm making a loaf of bread actually when I'm doing this. Just sort of tucking it in so that it's attractive and not too tightly, because some people will like to draft from the end, so I want to make sure that it's going to give them an easy drafting experience. And so there is the bat from Eleanor, ready to spin. I don't spin from bats, like I said, I spin from the lock. And so what I've heard people say they do, many, if they're trying to spin woolen, will pull from the center here, and because the fibers aren't necessarily aligned, they can get a nice woolen effect. Others I know open up the bat and pull strips, and because I've lined up the fibers kind of carefully, it's easier for them to get a worsted spin, or maybe semi-worsted, I guess. Another alternative is just to pull off big pieces, right? More like spinning from the lock, and just spin. I imagine maybe if you're doing short draw with a drop spindle, this might be nice, so you don't have a long strand getting caught up in your spun single. So hopefully that gives you some insight into my approach for turning fine Shetland blocks into bat.